I came onto this, running through P6 and going in scheduling, I was first tasked with doing a task plan, and I didn't understand it first, but it took a very short amount of time to understand what was going on here. And I could say with my years of experience in construction, I pretty quickly adapted to using a task plan in my daily work schedule. And it's very simplified and very easy to explain to everyone, and it's pretty solid in getting stuff done in the field. Things to explain on the TAC plan mainly would be like the legend over here on the side, and then of course you have the calendar on the top. So your job you would come into and you'd have the dates on the top. Of course you put in that calendar for the length of time of that, and then when you're going to start your first activities. All these activities are color coded and by number, so you can use the legend on the side. So just for example, in the legend 1, priority walls and tape. When you're first going into a section of rough end, the first thing is you do is your priority walls and tape. You do your rough end fire sprinkler for all your high items that go in, rough end plumbing, electrical, so on, all the way down through. And then those numbers correlate into the space here. Real simple from a graph system of your legend with your dates, and then when you're doing those items by area. So just a kind of overview on stuff, legend, calendar, and then here we put the areas. So in your building, I mean, it may be that you haven't divided it in areas. Maybe it's a smaller, and maybe it's rooms. Maybe it's different phases in a project. And on some smaller projects, you may have one line. Maybe you're doing everything at once. You have your framing going all the way through, you have your roughing going all the way through. Same concept. So you got your line. So first thing when you're building, you would build your line sequence of how you would build that in your sequence going across, and then that duplicates going down. What's nice about the dates, something we do here is we put this string right here so that you can kind of monitor. Lots of different ways to do that. We put these nails in, put a string right here so you can go to the date where you're working. So like this week, I know on this line, I should be doing all these activities in this line in this area. So you just come right through and you say we should be coming down, and let's say on the second floor over here in area D, we should be doing it's number 25 and 23. So the legend, 25 low voltage fire alarm, and 23 fixing architect punch items up there. So those items should be being done at that time. One thing that I like to do with the TAC plan, and this is helpful, it can be done different ways. A lot of color here in the rough end, and a lot of color in the finishes. Something that I liked about this TAC plan, not something that you have to do, but all the gray in the center here, we went from our one-sided drywall to taping and then to paint. So I liked how it kind of gave a divide in there, so that I knew that I'm in rough end on this half and I'm on finishes on this half. So it gives you a goal and like a complete visual. Visual is what this is kind of all about. You know, when you're running a regular schedule and you're going through pages of P6, you know, I would keep that in my pocket. I'd print out 3-week, 6-week, go walk the job and make sure that I was on track with everything I'm doing. You're going through pages and you're hitting those areas, going through lines. When you're trying to explain it to somebody, you're going through all those lines, and it all looks the same to some people. Now, to some of us that are used to looking at it, you see it right off the bat. But for anybody, we work with new people all the time. This is a visual. I mean, they can see the full calendar of the job. You can see all the areas in the building and all the functions that should be doing. It goes straight down the line. You can see what you should be doing at any time. So it's a very visual tool and very simple. I used to get hung up on the detail in a schedule. I'd say, oh, my P6, I have so much detail inside of that schedule. And on here, I'm trying to fit a complete job on 11 by 17 page. Well, now I'm a few years into using the TAC plan, and I don't have that setback at all. If I can plan out months ahead of time where I should be within a few days in an area and land that, that's useful. And if I can do it at a glance on one page, that's even more useful. Through something we added on to here that you can do is kind of useful in some areas, putting the square footage next to them. We kind of added that to our TAC plan because it kind of explains the size of that area when you're in the space. And sometimes when we combine areas, you can combine areas because that total square footage is equal to another area. So as you're coming through and you're given your blocks, like number 14, go to the legend, that's ceiling grid, right? So number 14 in the areas, I'm giving it 2 weeks. Each of these blocks is a five-day period, a single week by our calendar. So we're giving it a 2-week block. Well, in some areas you can combine those. You still have your 2-week block going through. You say we can land 2 areas at the same time in that same duration on there. Stacking, the whole purpose of this is to try to get away from stacking. So you see that natural flow, and again, it's a visual. So like you look at this thing and you see all these activities and you see they run right down the line and continue. So you get a visual that you're not stacking trades and that you're not in an area before you should be. So that's really helpful too. In areas, an example on this Takt plan, we started this job and everything was straight on the original Takt. There was issues with steel in the beginning of the project, some other things that kind of held up production on the first areas. So in our update, we shifted to Takt. So this top section here you see in these areas on this project, this area in E and F versus A, B, C, D, that shifted over. So what we were able to do is early is to identify that problem. You can see it here, and then real quickly we could go to those trades. So well before we began working in areas, you know, when we're going to be doing flooring, this 17, for example, again, off the legend, 17 is electrical trim and mechanical trim. 18 is flooring and specialty trim. So in those items, let's say flooring, we knew ahead of time that for number 18, shows here, we would be in the same area 4 times consecutively. So we were able to reach out to those trade partners ahead of time and say, hey, heads up, we've had this issue, and we could tell them months ahead of time where we were going to need their help. Reach out to them and say that we we're going to need help in 2 different areas at one time. They looked at it was far enough ahead where we could plan it, work into the system. They bought into it. Actually, every sub that we showed that to all said that they could handle it because we gave them enough notice on that. And it's because we could see that in the schedule as soon as we moved it over. It was a lot easier to see it. Other examples that I give on Takt planning as a benefit. Let's say you get called up and you're trying to get lights on site, you're looking for procurement, you need lights, you want to know when are you going to be setting lights up on the 3rd floor, okay? And they want to know when we need to have those in, okay? We're doing grid, right? So we need grid in and then we'll drop lights. So I can go to the Takt, pretty simple, I'm asked that question. I go over here, my legend, ceiling grid is number 14. I go down here to my 3rd floor. I go all the way across to number 14. I go straight up, and I say I'm going to need them the end of June. It's a pretty simple equation to be able to look at it and give them those dates. We put on here comeback zones. Happens a lot of times on job. If you're in an area and you're working, and let's say you've got 2 rooms in an area that there's a change from the owner, you got something, the procurement's going to be pushed out. Well, you don't want to wait on that whole entire area. You wouldn't block off the whole entire floor just for that one area. So we go ahead and finish out those areas. Some examples here would be like the optometry department. Optometry department on this job, it occurs on the 2nd floor in area E2. Okay, so when we were running E2, we knew about that. The owner came to us and said, hey, we don't have an optometrist. We don't know what the final layout of the room is going to be. We're going to have to leave that in a state until we have it so we can do the roughing and put it in the right place for what we need. We said, okay. So we moved on with E2. We labeled that as a comeback zone. We put it down here. So we've had these 5 areas came up, same example. So optometry, dental sterile, central sterile, the x-ray, dental lab, and pharmacy. So same thing with each one of those. They didn't have either equipment, a vendor, or they didn't have the doctor in the case where they could finalize it. So we identified those and moved them out of the schedule so that we could continue, but still knew that we had these on. Now, where this helps by putting that on is when we pull these areas out, we know that we can't move back into there until we have manpower. We've already doubled up here. We know that we can't go back in there until manpower has finished their scope and come down in there. So we had 1 area from the owner, 2 areas from the owner, 3 areas, all the way through 5 areas. Well, we mapped this out, put it on here, and you see what we have to extend out. We need to have framers available. We need to have get the material so we can put the duct in, all the way through finishes. And so what that done, when we had our substantial completion date on here, like this is our goal line here at the end, substantial completion marked out. Ours used to be in the middle of October. We had all these areas that the owner couldn't give us answers on, we couldn't proceed on. So what that did is we mapped that out, and it pushes our timeline. So when it was time to talk to the owner, we sat down with the Takt plan and we said, okay, we have these items that we can't answer. This is when we can get those items in once we receive those answers. And what that does is it pushes out to here due to what these setbacks were. And we need an extra month of time. So looking at this, the owner took a look at it and said, you're right. And we got that additional time. There's not much conversation about it. And now we have that date. So it's another way that it can help you as a visual. Just on the owner aspect, we have, we go through our schedule. So when we do our monthly schedule update with the owner, we'll have a meeting with them. The last several meetings, even though P6 is our contractual document, our owner actually asks us to go through the Takt plan. When we bring up P6, they say, can we look at the Takt plan? Because even then, they can visually see it. It makes more sense to them. It's a lot easier to explain. So it's definitely a benefit, even then from an owner aspect. When I'm in the field, I use the Takt plan. I'll print it off as 11 by 17, fold it up. This thing's all wrinkly up. It's in my pocket all the time. I have this in Excel. I can always also pull it up on the iPad. I have it on there and I can do my updates on it. But I just am accustomed to carrying this around, just like a 3-week schedule, 6-week schedule. Carry this Takt plan around with me. When I go through an update, I'll just walk out here, and as you can see, all these black lines on there going. So I just kind of black out the date of where I'm at in a week and just highlight if I'm done or not in an area. And then I can see right away on there, real simply, anything that's glaring out that's an issue that I need to do. When I'm walking through a section, like come out to a section like this, and I was checking down here on this one, and we see down here on the bottom where like grid should be being done. It's a 2-week duration, and I've blacked part of that out that first week. So what that tells me is it's in process. You know, number 14 up here, number 14 is grid. I go down here to this area and I see it right there, and it's blacked out halfway because I've walked through, because we've got grid going in. They still got some completion to do on this side, completion down this way, but I can see that that's being worked on in this section. So I can update that right there and I black it out. And then just gives you a complete visual on what you're doing. And then I can take this after I've walked everything off and I've checked everything out in the field, and then I can go back and input that into the schedule, and this can be used as an update.
Kind of picking up where we took off last time, we were talking about the Takt plan and the use of the Takt plan in our daily working here on the site. We have a daily huddle with all the trade partners, the foremans, or the superintendents of each trade every day at the exact same time, together here in our huddle area, and we do so to talk schedule and talk constraints or anything else that might be a conflict between trades. So as we talked before, the Takt plan is broken up into 5-day periods. This particular Takt plan has 2 5-day periods together, so we flow in a 2-week rhythm. So most all of our activities flow in a 2-week rhythm. When we start talking about how we put this into a daily huddle, we have our huddle boards. They're a 3-week huddle board. We have 2 of them for 6 weeks. What we do on this particular site is that we don't erase it every week and rewrite it. We just erase the week number. So this is week 1, which is the week we're in. This is week 2, and then week 3. What we do as Oakland, we pull milestones right off of the Takt plan, and then we put them here for our target milestone for that week. That's all, the only thing that Oakland writes on this Takt plan, or on our huddle board, is the actual milestones. We encourage our trade partners to write milestones on there as well, and they do from time to time. Then we've instructed them to break up their work for the week, 5-day period, on what's going to get them to the goal or to the milestone for that week. So all the writing you see on here has been written on here by our trade partners. We've asked them to indicate how many guys they have working in this area. So C1, and we have one guy, and he's going to be there all week. Mill work, he's going to be there all week. This particular guy didn't write how many guys. Electrician up here, each guy has their own color. Electrician's red, and he has 4 guys in D1 pulling wire. It's that simple. The framer, drywaller, has 2 guys doing shaft caps, or shafts. We're capping the bottom of our shafts. They're gonna be there for 2 days. We have a sheet metal guy doing punch lists these 3 days. So real quickly, anybody, our trade partners or ourselves, can walk by this anytime during the day. They can write stuff on there, or they can look and say, who's in D2 right now? Oh, LVT install. They're laying flooring. I guess I can't go in there. And that's why you don't see anybody else really on this area of D2, because they're laying flooring. One thing I probably should have mentioned was each one of these fly zones have been divided up into an area of the building that correlates with our Takt plan. So F1 on the Takt plan is area F1 here, and it carries all the way through week by week, week by week. We try to encourage people not to have activities written up here that take longer than 1 week or 2 weeks at the most. If they do, we ask them to break it up into another goal. So maybe a guy who's going to be here for a full 2 weeks hanging rock, we would say, okay, 50% the first week, 50% the second week, because come Friday, we're going to talk about how we did on our goals. What we started doing on this project was going ahead and listing different inspections. We've already gone all the way through our rough end here, and we're in the finishes now and trying to get out from above ceiling. So the one thing we're trying to do is make sure we track all our above ceiling activities. So we have an Oakland punch above ceiling, Brown, who happens to be our jurisdiction having authority, above ceiling, owner, architect, engineers above ceiling. And so the date we write on here is the date they actually did the initial inspection. When we sign off all those areas as that inspection being closed out, each of these areas will get a dot to indicate, as we're working our way through this, which areas have been done and which haven't. Same thing here, Oakland punch list, and then owner architect punch list. The date we actually go and walk the punch list we'll put here, and same way for the architect, and then the date that we complete the punch list items, boom, we'll get a red dot or a green dot. And so first thing you know, this whole area is becoming covered with dots. It's very visual, it's very easy to see where your progress and track your progress, not only by date, but by visual completion. Our guys are here every morning discussing this 15-minute huddle. Each trade partner foreman has a few minutes to address what he's doing for the day, perhaps what he's doing the next few days, or if there's a conflict in the week with other trade partners. Oftentimes we find ourselves going across the hallway here to the floor plan, 3 particular trade partners with a pin in a particular area, asking one trade partner to the other, not necessarily Oakland, but one trade partner to the other, hey, I'm in this area today, did you get that complete? Can I sheetrock that? Or whatever it might be. So we have a visual of all of our floor plans, of our entire site plan, and then we can work our way through those as we have this discussion with the trade partners. So as you might see at this point, this is one giant discussion. These are all visual aids for us to be able to begin to have this open discussion with our trade partners on a daily basis. So daily, we're looking at the Takt plan. Daily, we're tracking where we're at. Mr. Electrician, are you going to be done? So come Wednesday, the middle of the week, part of our routine here is to ask our trade partner, how are you looking to make your goal for the week right now? And I made a statement the other day, and I really like the sounds of it. Let's get a habit of crash landing a project every Friday instead of the last month of the project. And so the idea is let's put the crunch on right here. Come Wednesday, he says, I'm not gonna make it. Well, you need to work 10 hours a day for the rest of the week. You can work Saturday. We don't want your problem this week to slip into next week, because we already have next week's activities planned out for these guys you're using here. They're already committed somewhere else. So we don't want them to be still taking care of last week's work next week. So let's take care of that issue in more hours, moving a couple guys that are ahead to help these guys out, or working Saturday, whatever it takes, that we're focused day after day on the Takt plan, on transferring the Takt plan information week by week into a 5-day period. It's very easy to discuss. I don't know that there's an exact perfect way of these guys writing this up here. That's not the point. The point is that we begin to build this friendship, this teamship with each other to be able to discuss sometimes difficult items. There's times the sheet metal guy, he's mad as all get out, the framer, because the framer doesn't have his openings right. We deal with that right here. That doesn't fester for days and days. That's going to be dealt with in the morning huddle every morning until that issue's been ironed out. We can work around it. We can work the extra hours. We can get guys caught up. So let's talk for a second about our plan percent complete. So as we move through the plan, and this is a 3-week planner board, as we move through that week's plan, we're wanting to know, how are we doing? Are we just giving a lot of yik yak here and talking, or are we actually meeting the goal? So on Fridays, we go down through here and we say, okay, we made a commitment for above ceiling items complete. So we've walked that area above ceiling, and we're looking to have those areas complete so that the jurisdiction having authority can re-walk it next week, and we can get it signed off and drop ceiling tile. So each trade partner that's committed to that, how you doing? Well, not quite there. We didn't quite make it. There's no percentage here. It's pass or fail. So we put a negative sign up here. Next one, above ceiling items. Yeah, we got that one. So we put a plus one there. Millwork complete in E2. Yeah, good deal. And away we go down through here. All these items. We get them all added up. We got 13 items. 8 of them are positives. You know, the rest are negatives. Get the calculator out. Where's your percent at? And so then at that point, we're going to step over here. And this is something fairly new we've put in on this particular project, but it really should be a part of this. It gives the guys an idea where they trending. You know, a few weeks ago in May, we were all the way down to 69% for the week. The next week we're at 78. The next week we're at 75. Last week we jumped up to 87. And so pretty soon, and again, this is not about Oakland. We're the orchestrator. We're the guy up here orchestrating the band. The band here is everybody else, all our trade partners. And so they begin to have ownership of this. They begin to have ownership of the dots, finishing out an inspection. They begin to have ownership of the board. And that's the whole idea. So we have an open dialect between all our guys, a place to communicate with each other. And as a superintendent, and having been a superintendent for many years, this plan caused my phone literally to stop ringing. Comparison, I mean, it still rings obviously, but compared to the days of it just ringing and ringing and ringing, and guys asking me questions instead of asking the guy that's standing next to him question, because they had no relationship with them. They didn't know who they were. They didn't know their name. So we gather here every morning. We call each other by name. We know each other's trade. We know each other's traits. And this particular project, we're just all right out a year into it, not quite. And we've developed quite a teamwork between our trade partners. Now as we move into finishes, we get new trade partners, and they come in and become part of the daily huddle. talking through items and trying to meet our goals, and perhaps one of our trade partners identify that, hey, I got a problem. I can't quite finish. Well, why not? I never got an answer. I never received an answer to the RFI we wrote a week ago. You know, and I don't know what to do. I'm to an impasse. So rather than saying, well, okay, I'll check on that, what we say is, okay, let's track those problems, those roadblocks as constraints. So what we have is a constraint board, and again, we put stuff on and off the constraint board all the time. We've endeavored to even move it to electronic format, but I still find a value in it, having it written here. And again, on Fridays, oftentimes the meeting on Friday takes a few more minutes because we want to look at the constraint board and see, is there anything on there that we can take off? Maybe we got an answer to the RFI and we didn't give it to the trade partner, or maybe we haven't received it. We just got it in the office yesterday. So constraints is something we want, or roadblocks is something we want to track as part of this process. And if I could mention one other thing, is oftentimes we have a little blank piece of the board somewhere, and if somebody in this meeting that we're trying to hold to about 15 minutes gets off on a tangent, we don't want to just silence them, but we don't want to waste everybody else's time. So we say, hey, why don't we put that in the parking lot? And just real quick, I'll have one of the FEs go over there and write it in the parking lot that this trade partner needs to talk about that. And then immediately following the meeting, we grab him and whoever else it affects. We go over there and discuss it, get it wiped off, and we go on about